Hey, welcome into Dom's Weekly Roundup, where we bring in a pundit. Tonight, Dan Gross, maybe a couple pundits, and go through all the things that are out there, particularly the media aspects of this. Dan, we were talking about accuracy in the media, and here on the Dom Giordano program, our fact checkers here in the crew immediately said 40% are gay out there. You wanted to clarify where you came up with that.
I did. Accuracy is my strong suit. Mathematics, however, is not. And what I'd done, I remembered there was the 10% statistic, and I was thinking I'd mentioned a song lyric. There's a song that talked about a particular band that had 4 guys in it, and that there would be a 40% chance that one of those guys was gay, which again would be the 10%. So I don't believe that 40% of Americans are gay. It's probably
we will not hear that soundbite on the Dom Giordano radio show tomorrow because Dan has been able to clarify it. Okay,
I hope so.
Let's go to Jamie checking in. Hey, Jamie, good evening. Welcome to Dom Time.
Good evening.
Yes, go ahead, Jamie.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
the
loud and
line's
clear.
very staticky.
Go ahead, Jamie. All right, we may have a little technical problem, guys. Maybe we can clear that up with Jamie. Let's turn to some of the things, too, world of sports that you did cover. I've always thought the Eagles had a bad reputation, deservedly so. I only interviewed Andy Reid once, standing up at a Mormon Tabernacle choir with a lot of people running interference for me. And he was, and I've interviewed people at the national level, one of the singular most arrogant people I've ever been around. And I think the Eagles organization has some of that flavor about them.
Right.
Whereas the Phillies, for example, have not because of Dave Montgomery and others. I mean, they have their flaws also. But your sense now with the Chip Kelly here, the draft, no more Joe Banner, no more Andy Reid, do you see a different sports landscape? It
seems as though in the last couple of years, the Eagles have been trying to come off a little warmer and fuzzier, even while Reid was here toward the end of his tenure. And I wonder how much of that had to do with the success of the Phillies. I don't know how much of this was real or just perceived, but there was the belief that the more successful the Phillies were done and the more that the media and the public was talking about the Phillies as opposed to the Eagles, as the Eagles hadn't been,
I remember
had been underperforming.
They dropped the thing about Donovan McNabb on the night of the Phillies opening day.
Exactly.
Yeah, that kind of tit for tat.
Right.
Now, as a newspaper, do you have any other stake in it other than if they give you the story and you want it first, that's what you're going to go with?
Yeah, I mean, the media would cover whatever the story was. I mean, sure, you cover the Phillies game, but then you also cover the McNabb angle. But the Eagles, I think, possibly in part due to the jealousy over whatever attention the Phillies were getting, but also possibly because they understood that this was the reaction that their fans were giving them, that they were sick, they wanted Reid to go, they were sick of the way that the organization was run. I think, like I said, you saw a little bit more transparency. They started doing the Eagles Fight Night that they do before the season where they have people come and they have been trying to raise more of a profile about their charity efforts. But like you said, with Reid being arrogant, I mean, I think the situation is that when you work in a town where you're getting the kind of coverage that you're getting in professional sports, and you're dealing with criticism and players and the press day in and day out, you're getting heckled by the fans and stuff. I'm sure it gets to you, and I'm not an apologist for Reid, but I think that what you're seeing now with Chip Kelly is just, it's a clean slate situation. It's the same kind of thing if a new president takes over. Right. The person gets a little bit of wiggle room and growth period. Do you use a
media guy, Dan? And I'm not sure, did you grow up here in Philadelphia?
I did.
You did, okay. You get your back up as I do when a lazy sports writer attacks Philadelphia fans, the same narrative that's out there, all the way back to the lame Santa thing.
Yeah.
Santa deserved it, as far as I say. How do you like that? So, there's just too much of this. And I think when it comes to animals at the 700 level, yeah, we have that, but I think New York does too.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. I mean, yeah, the Santa Claus story, the throwing batteries at this one or that one, it's kind of lazy journalism because it's a quick example to push to. But yeah, I mean, Philadelphia has very passionate sports fans, and I think you're not seeing the same kind of thing in the 700 level. But then, you have a situation like where there was the fatal fight that went on a couple years ago in the parking lot at Citizens Bank Park, and that didn't help the impression of the fans.
Then and the tasered fan running across the field. We don't fool around here. We don't tackle you. We taser you in Philadelphia.
I thought that picture was hilarious.
What's your all-time favorite daily news stories or covers? Not so much just what you were involved in, but do you have a few favorites that you guys, right up there with the New York Post? It's just genius. The headline writer for the Daily News, is it one guy?
It depends what headline? I mean, there's someone who does all the sports back pages,
Right.
and then there's someone else who would do the front page. But there's usually a couple people. One of my favorites, which was recently, and it's very fitting because it was on this gentleman's last night, a guy named Kevin Bevan, who was the news editor.
Yes, he edited me.
Yeah, he
Spectacular job.
Absolutely,
Yes.
he's a great guy. He about a month ago, there was the story where the couple, there was a junkie couple had stolen a few cars and they were driving around.
Yes.
And one of the pictures that they found of the couple,
Right.
it happened to show that the woman had
Very
an ample bust.
Yes.
So the headline said a couple of boobs, and I just thought that was terrific. That was
It
actually
was.
that was the first thing that really made me miss the paper since I left. Just being there for that kind of
Yeah, well,
fun
let's talk about
experience.
papers too. We have a lot of young people here that are the crew at Dom Time, et cetera, curling up with their laptop. You're curled up with the Kindle.
Right.
I have to feel that newspaper. It's essential to me, the Sunday Inquirer.
Right.
What's happening with the hard copy and newspapers in general and paywalls?
The paywall, I really think, is a great idea that unfortunately came too late. I mean, it's too early to say what's happening with the Daily News and the Inquirer and how
Right.
successful they'll be. Obviously, I wish them the best of luck, and I hope that a lot of people read the paper. But I also remember having a conversation with one of the publishers about 10 years ago saying, hey, how come you guys aren't charging for the internet? I mean, I understand how in, let's say, 95 or 98 or whenever it was, all these papers suddenly put all of their content out there because they saw other people were doing it.
Right.
But it's almost like at no point did it occur to them that they might have to monetize this, and that they were, there was all these studies saying, no, your online reader is different than your print reader. But I don't know how true that is. And at some point, you are certainly cannibalizing your own audience if you're selling something over here but giving it away
Right,
over here,
right.
especially with the abundance of people who sit at a desk all day
Well,
and
the
have
point
internet
I would
access.
make to everybody watching, though, too, is you're not going to get as easily in any other medium. People say, well, I can go on Twitter, I can get the news right there,
Right.
but you're not getting Dan Gross. You're not getting the insight. You're not getting curmudgeons like Stu Bykowski, who somehow or another, not watching right now, but we'll find out about this. You're not going to get all that. And you're not going to get what makes the paper, the Daily News particularly, I have an affinity for, part of Philadelphia.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I love the Daily News. I spent 14 years there. I think I also like holding a paper, but I understand that, like I said, it depends. If you're at a desk all day and you could type in Philly.com
Yeah.
and read all the news, you might do that rather than making a stop on your way to work to pick it up. It depends. Maybe you don't pass a boot jack, or you're not at the train station with the honor box. But also technology. If you're already on the computer, you're already on the iPad for something. I can understand why somebody drifts toward that medium. I just think it's the onus is on the media companies to figure out how to really monetize that. And like I
Exactly.
said, I hope, now that they've done it, even though it's arguably 10 or 15 years too late, I certainly hope that the Inquirer and Daily News can get as many subscribers as possible.
Thanks for being the first victim here on Dom Time, the first weekly roundup. Coming up, my own thoughts on the Gosnell trial, straight ahead on Dom Time. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight on Dom Time. In the wrap-up this week, the Gosnell trial, the jury heard closing arguments of both sides today. Tomorrow, as I understand it, the judge will read out the litany of charges and hand it over to the jury. I think that this case should have been covered by the media much more extensively. I think the local media did a decent job with it, and we will be following up to see the repercussions of what happens with Dr. Gosnell and some of the issues that are involved. Watch for this one, the governor's race. Allison Schwartz might be the candidate on the Democratic side against Governor Tom Corbett. If so, she was someone who ran an abortion clinic, and there will be questions about Dr. Gosnell, fair or otherwise. We'll talk about it. Let's hope the jury does the right thing tomorrow. Back tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on Dom Time.